Hello and welcome to another book review video by Rick Miracle Me in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. Sometimes things just get to the point where it's urgent to talk about something. Urgent. A clear and present danger to the health of people all over the world. Back in 1933, the powers that be were declaring that Germany were the evil people and they all had to be destroyed. And apparently right now, maybe 5 minutes ago, maybe 5 minutes from now, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. But it looks like President Donald Trump has issued orders that Iran is to be attacked. So he sent an aircraft carrier, a fleet of ships, and bomber planes. And apparently, they've already attacked the Iran's cyberspace internet yesterday. And apparently, the newspaper reported that Trump decided and changed his mind from attacking Iran. And then he came out and said, no, I didn't change my mind. I just put a little delay on it. Trying to get Iran to submit to something. Regime change, like Venezuela. People are starving in Venezuela. And I had a couple videos taken down that I played Benjamin Freedman's famous speech in. So if YouTube took down Benjamin Freedman's speech, and from my research, he was a honorable man, intellect, business owner, Jewish guy. So if we can't listen to him, who can we listen to? Got a couple of his books here. Facts Are Facts. Another one, Facts Are Facts. So you can get different editions. First, I didn't have the book. I downloaded the PDF and I've already read it. So I'll read some from that in this book review. This is series 272. But another character comes to mind. Another German man. Back in 1933, Samuel Udemeyer. So I do want to read from this PDF document concerning Israel, Zionism, the place where we are today, the 22nd of June 2019. And lots of videos on YouTube saying, without a doubt, World War III is coming. Without a doubt, many of these Illuminati, Zionist, elite, bankster, Kabbalist leaders have said the New World is coming. Either the people will accept it, or it'll be forced on the people. The people will go along willingly, or force and might will be thrown against the people. But they're going to have their global world order. They call themselves the aristocrats of the world. And apparently they want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. This is 2019, June 22nd. I'm about to share something from 1933, 7 years prior to World War I. II. Both world wars were orchestrated and planned by these same people. Even in 1880s, Albert Pike, the leader of the Freemasons in America, and he was in communication with some otherworldly beings, masters. He was into the occult, make no mistake about it, the Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, and the occult teachings of the Freemasons, his book Morals and Dogma. There's something to all these symbols and all these rituals and all the things they're doing. Mind controlling we the people. Something weird has been happening, and I think I have an answer for it. Have you ever heard of the 100 monkey syndrome? Well, apparently, on this particular island, for some reason, there were no bananas or whatever the monkeys ate. And so some benevolent people decided to plant some sweet potatoes or something like that in the sand, and they flourished, they grew. And they tried to teach the monkeys to eat them. Well, they kept putting it out there however they did it, and they got some monkeys to eat it, and the monkeys were irritated picking it out of the sand. There was sand all over it, and it was just a very troublesome thing to do to get them to eat something new. But they kept trying, the people who were trying to help them. And they kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And after a while, when a certain percentage of the monkeys figured it out, something in the monkey DNA, I guess all these monkeys are connected in this particular island, something made the neural transmitters in the brain to all the monkeys all over the island to instinctively know to dig up the sweet potato and wash it in the stream or whatever and eat it. Something clicked into the psyche of the monkeys. So apparently this world that many of us, all of us probably don't know the truth about reality, apparently we belong to spiritual groups. And so the 100 monkey syndrome probably works on masses of people also, and other critters. I mean, it's amazing. I live here in the country, in the mountains of North Carolina, and a lot of birds exist here and nest and raise their babies. Squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits. Quite fascinating. And the birds, after they make their nest in a bird box, they won't reuse it, the old nest. So you have to open up the box, clean it out, wash it out, put it back together, and then the birds will come along and start bringing little sticks and straw and build a new nest. And then they feed their babies and carry out the poop sacks so that to keep the nest clean. And then they stand outside the nest when the hatchlings are getting ready to leave the nest. And they call on them, come on, come on. And every now and then, one of the birds will be a scaredy cat. He won't come out. He's too afraid to take that first step and leap over the edge. And there have been people who put cameras into the nest. And at some point, the little bird breaks, goes psycho, goes crazy, goes berserk, and starts smashing himself around in the nest because the other baby birds have left and mommy and daddy's outside. Come on, calling him, but he's afraid to do it. And he just goes crazy. They act so human-like, and when a hawk shows up in my yard, all the other birds gang up together and go chasing the hawk, etc. So I just noticed such a human-like, or maybe it's humans acting like animals, but God's creation seems to be programmed. Now, where's this leading, you're asking me? Well, I think with the sexualization of society, where they use, everybody knows this, women in commercials for cars and tires and everything else, food. And nowadays, no matter what street you walk on, the women are wearing those tight black pants. And they're even sexualizing little children to wear those tight black pants and other clothes. This has been in the news. My point is, we are susceptible to social conditioning and mind control and alteration just like the monkeys were. And the sexualization of everything can catch you or I off guard, and we're programmed, we're humans, male, female, we're attracted to the opposite sex, whatever. And if they sexualize it everywhere you go, you may find yourself looking over here or seeing that girl walking over there with skin-tight clothing that she may as well be naked. And it distracts you, it alters your thinking, especially even the news with the threats of Iran and a bomb supposedly hitting the oil tankers and shooting down a drone. They're messing with our psyche, the 100 monkey syndrome. We are being affected. The mass media is doing it, and they did it back in 1933, and they're doing it now, and they did it at 9/11 and World War I, and so much more. We humans need to become resilient to this mind control. We need to wake up and recognize it. So when you turn over there and you're at the park and all of a sudden you see these sexualized women and children and everything, and you catch yourself and you go, man, it's like a magnet, it attracts you. And it's intentional, in my opinion. Back in 1933, now in 2019, back in 2001. So there was this guy back before World War II, Samuel Udemeyer, who went over to Germany. This was after World War I, before World War II. Much of the whole world was in a serious depression. And remember, the banksters controlled the money supply in the United States. These non-governmental people, Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgans, Schiffs, took control of the USA money supply in December 21st, 1913, 6 months prior to World War I starting. You think they needed to control America's money supply, control America's politicians and President Woodrow Wilson, so they could do World War I and World War II. So they crashed the economy in the United States. You've seen pictures. And apparently, I didn't know this, but they were crashing the economy all over the world. In Russia, they were killing up to 100 million Christians after the Bolshevik invasion months after World War I. Crazy. And it's the same evil forces behind the scenes. World War I, World War II, Bolshevik Revolution, 9/11, World War III. Even President Donald Trump had a Kabbalah teacher. The Encyclopedia Judaica says the Kabbalah historically is the religious cultural beliefs of the Jewish people, many of them. And I'm also have learned that during World War II in Germany, let's say there were 6 million Jews, 3 million were Orthodox, God-fearing Jews and did not want to leave Germany and go live in the desert. The other 3 million were Zionist, Kabbalist, elitist, thinking they were better than everybody, aristocrats. And they wanted to get that land in the Middle East, like a cornerstone of the world where they could control Asia and Africa and Mongolia and Russia and Europe and America and South America. They had a plan for 300 years. See, the economy was crashing between World War I and World War II all over the world. People in Germany were suffering terrible. Russia, they were being killed. So the elite wanted to move the game along like 911. And Mr. Samuel Udemeyer went over to Germany and came back and reported. The following is a transcript of Samuel Udemeyer's speech made on WABC declaring a holy war by the Jews against Germany, and appealing to all masses of non-Jewish humanity to boycott Germany-made imports and all merchants who have German-made items in their establishments. Oh my! So apparently today there are a lot of organizations at the American universities and other places around the world, and they're calling on the boycott of Israel. Israel's calling on the U.S. government to make it illegal to boycott Israel, to say bad things about, or say even truthful things, not necessarily bad. But in times like these, truth is bad. So they want the government to make it illegal. And in Europe, it is already illegal. You could go to prison by saying the truth. When will it get to the boiling point where it winds up being execution, like they did in ancient times. You said something bad about the king, off with your head. So Samuel Udemeier went over to Germany during these times of suffering in Germany and called on the boycott of all German-made items. So they did it to Germany, calling on Jews, taking out major ads in New York newspapers and world newspapers all over the world. Don't buy anything from Germany. We're going to destroy Germany. They could do it. But today, they're trying to make it illegal. Boycott Israel. So what they did, we can't do. It's a double standard. So what did Samuel Udemeier say when he got back to New York? On WABC declaring a holy war by Jews against Germany. The entire speech was published in the New York Times on the morning following the broadcast, August 7th, 1933, which was mentioned by Benjamin Freedman in his talk before a group of patriots. A short excerpt from The World's Troublemakers gives further insight to this speech. When Hitler, this is his speech here, was soundly established, this is a description of what happened. When Hitler was soundly established, Samuel Udemeier, a New York Jewish lawyer, called for war on Germany. The call was made through radio station WABC on 8-733. He had just returned from a world conference of Jews at The Hague. In the broadcast, he said that he was calling for a holy war and described the Jews as the aristocrats of the world in his speech. And since then, I've learned, listening to Eustace Mullins and some other material, it's funny how you stumble on this stuff, but it was the Illuminati, the Zionist Jewish elites, banksters, who put Hitler in power, who made a deal with Hitler, even something called the Transfer Agreement. What they had intended to do is to obtain the Palestinians' land to create the State of Israel as per the Balfour Agreement during World War I, which Britain reneged on. It wasn't going to go against the entire Arab world to give the Zionist Jews Palestine, so they had to have World War II. And during the Versailles trials after the war, the criminal war trials, Versailles hearings, Versailles Treaty, whatever you want to call it, it came out. The Jewish people stood up and said, okay, Britain, we helped you win the war. We want the Palestinians' land. And the Germans who were sitting there in their seats were dumbfounded. Well, that's why we lost the war. There was all the people turned traitor. All the Jewish people living in Germany betrayed us. So anyway, Samuel Udemeier went over there, 1933. And this same gentleman was connected with the Foreign Policy Association of New York. So the Council of Foreign Relations, Bilderberger groups, and all these organizations are these same people. And the worldwide organization to move Jews out of Germany, not only into the United States, but to Palestine and other countries. So this was a huge orchestrated move to get the Jews out of Germany before World War II. 6-7 years. Holy war was declared on Germany 7 years before World War II. Germany was under attack. Worldwide forces, all that money, all that power. They made a deal with Hitler. These activities were tied in with the organization known as the International Boycott on German Goods, which Udemeier was the head. So this New York Jewish lawyer was the head of this effort to try to destroy Germany. From that time, the Hate Germany campaign was intensified and made worldwide with special Jewish organized National Conference of Jews and Christians assisting. So they had a Hate Germany campaign. And today they're passing laws, apparently even in Florida and other places. You go to prison for something called hate speech. You can't do what they did back then. Worldwide hate against Germany. And all the propaganda in the news, worldwide hate against Iran. But if you talk about them and they're passing laws, it'll be a crime for you or I to speak the truth. Double standard. But then again, they call us goyim, which means cattle. They call themselves the aristocrats of the world. These are the hate spreaders. They never grew tired of praising themselves. That marked the beginning of the Jewish exodus from Germany. So all that anti-Semitism was created, instigated, propaganda, social conditioning, the 100 Monkey Syndrome. The whole world buying it, hook, line, and sinker like 911. You can't talk about it. Your videos, I've had 27 videos taken down on YouTube. And now they're getting ready to attack Iran. Bolton and so many other people are pushing it and pushing it. Apparently, Donald Trump, prior to being president, had a Kabbalah teacher. Apparently his ex-wife wrote a book on the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is associated with mysticism and, in my opinion, witchcraft. Synagogue of Satan, just like it says in Revelation 2.9, 3.9. You can't make this stuff up. And then all the satanic symbols everywhere. Common sense should show anybody what's up. But you can't talk about it. It's hate speech. And I got these books. Facts are facts. Facts are facts. All the information's in here. So Mr. Udemeyer comes back to New York after going to Germany, 1933. We have all, on a worldwide scale, been sold the myth, lie, of the so-called Holocaust. 6 million Jews killed. Note Udemeyer's mention of the... and you can find this document at this website. So Udemeyer comes back, and they say 6 million Jews were put in gas chambers. He comes back in 1933. Note Udemeyer's mention of the 600,000 souls we must save. So they get their story different, but back then he clearly said in his radio address, 600,000 souls. That's short of 1 million, not the 6 million. This is from the horse's mouth, it says on this document, in 1933, during the time the Jews were leaving Germany by the thousands. So you can see pictures on Yahoo image site and something called Aliyah, Zionism. And you'll see all the pictures of the trains and old ships and all the Jewish people. Plenty of material. It's true. The Holocaust lie was created to create a guilt complex in people all over the world who had nothing to do with the murder of even one Jew, never mind the fallacious figure of 6 million allegedly killed in foreign countries. The fact that more than 20 million people were killed by Joseph Stalin in the Bolshevik-controlled USSR, mostly Christians, is never mentioned. I was told several years ago by an educated and intelligent person that this was different. It was their own people that they killed. It's called brainwashing, folks. Thought control, mind control to the max. It's okay if a despot, puppet, ruler kills his own people. But the Holocaust myth of 6 million Jews is a crime, sin with which we must all live forevermore, and pay, and pay, and pay. It's time to stop the lying. Why was Adolf Hitler vilified? Because he had created a state money system, non-gold back, and had negotiated trade with other nations that didn't use the international bankers' monetary system. They were bartering, bypassing the usurers. And that's why there is an embargo on Venezuela. The previous president nationalized all the natural resources for the Venezuelan people. And that's why they're getting ready to attack Iran, because they're not under the control system by these aristocrats. And back then, when Germany had to be destroyed. Even had a book I went over in one of my book reviews, Germany Must Perish. Hitler continued, despite the boycott, to further his barter trading, and if enough nations had had the opportunity to participate, it would have been the end of the stranglehold, the unbridled power in the hands of a few creatures, lusting after world domination. Money is the name of their deceitful and dangerous game. Hitler called it bogus money. And remember, these people control the Federal Reserve, which is not federal. Billions and untold billions and probably trillions have been sucked out of the U.S. Treasury for a long time. Just think of it. There's only 300 million of us Americans in this huge country. In Alaska, they make so much money on natural resources, they give the citizens a check every year. They don't pay taxes. But they don't want you to know that's the way it should be all over this land. But they're making tons of money. They don't want you to know that. There is much about Hitler we don't know, so this is not intended to be a Hitler apologist commentary. I am sharing information gleaned from many and varied sources, which I believe to be credible, including historian Nestor Webster. Well, her book, World Revolution, that's one of the books that YouTube took down of my videos on my Rick Miracle channel, Freemasonry and Satanism book review. Miss Webster, along with other writers, had also written that Hitler had kicked the international bankers out of Germany. In his speech, Udemeyer claims that wealthy Jews are financing Hitler. So Mr. Udemeyer, a New York lawyer Jewish person who went over to Germany, came back to New York, claims that the wealthy Jews are financing Hitler. Should we believe Mr. Udemeyer, who was not a friend, calling for the destruction of Germany, and even saying that the wealthy Jews are financing him? Since they are the masters of lies, perhaps the statement was made to confuse the issue. It remains for the time being an unanswered question for me. And like I said before, half the Jews all over the world are not in on this, but they are usually under some kinds of threats if they go public. And who knows how many of them died during World War II who were of the Orthodox, God-believing Jewish people who didn't want Zionism. A thought which has been recurring for weeks, now as a result of a recent reading frenzy, a thought and a question. Given the political Zionists have controlled the media for a couple of 100 years, why would we believe that everything we've heard, read about Adolf Hitler, and the Zionist-controlled media was true? Signed, Jackie. More on Samuel Udemeyer in Who Was Cyrus Schofield? So it says here, the New York Times, Monday, August 7th, 1933, the text of Udemeyer's address, his speech. Following is a text of Samuel Udemeyer's address last night over station WABC after his return from Europe. So pay attention to what I say. You know who the man is. He went over to Germany, 1933. He came back, he called for a holy war against Germany, boycotting all goods, all countries all over the world. Jews were leaving en masse to come to the United States and other countries and to Palestine. The German regime was allowing them all to leave. They had made an agreement with Hitler in the book called The Transfer Agreement that it would be best for all if the Jews had a nation of their own. Here's his speech. My friends, what a joy and relief and a sense of security to be once more on American soil. the nightmares of horrors through which I have passed in those 2 weeks in Europe, listening to the heartbreaking tales of refugee victims beggar description. I deeply appreciate your enthusiastic greeting of my arrival today, which I quite understand is addressed not to me personally, but to the holy war and this cause of humanity in which we are embarked. So see what they're saying about Iran right now, and back during 9/11, what they said about Iraq, Afghanistan, and what they've been saying about the leader Assad of Syria, and the leader over there in Venezuela, and all over the world. Are we to believe that everybody all over the world, except these people, are evil people? I'm not buying it. That's me. Jews and non-Jews alike, for we are equally concerned that the work of centuries shall not be undone, and that civilization shall not be allowed to die. The work of centuries shall not be undone. It is a war that must be waged unremittingly until the black clouds of bigotry, race hatred, fanaticism that have descended upon what was once Germany but is now medieval Hitlerland have been dispersed. If we will but enlist to a man and persist in our purpose, the bright sun of civilization will again shine upon Germany, and the world will be a safer place in which to dwell. As our ship sailed up the bay today, past our proud Statue of Liberty, a gift to the U.S. from the Grand Orient Masonic Lodge, by the way, Illuminati Lodge of France. Just saying, when you read this stuff and you listen to what he says, sometimes you see that some people speak it with forked tongue. I breathe a prayer of gratitude and thanksgiving that this fair land of freedom has escaped the curse that has descended upon the benighted Germany, which has thereby been converted from a nation of culture into a veritable hell of cruel and savage beast. 1933. Now wait a minute. 1913, 20 years earlier, these elitists took over the control of the USA money supply. 6 months later, they started World War I. Britain was losing the war. Germany was winning the war. And it says in this document that it was the bankster Illuminati elite Jews who put Hitler in power. They'd made a deal called the Transfer Agreement. So it wasn't a free nation in America, is what I'm trying to say. We were going through the Great Depression. But what does he say here? He's arriving back in America. They have control of our country. And he's happy to sail past the Statue of Liberty. And he's given thanksgiving to be in this fair land of freedom. Well, they control our money supply, our politicians, and they bring us our presidents. They should be elated and happy. They control the United States. They continue to deceive we the people. Yea? Nay? Again, the truth is treason if the evil people are in charge. The world's concern, we owe it not only to our persecuted brethren, but to the entire world, to now strike in self-defense a blow that will free humanity from a repetition of this incredible outrage. This time the Jews are the victims, next time it may be the Catholics or the Protestants. If we once admit, as is brazenly insisted by the German government, that such fiendish persecution of the people are of one race or creed is an internal domestic affair and not a world concern, how are we to know whose turn it will be next? Now remember, the elite Jews who put Hitler in power had made an agreement with Hitler called the Transfer Agreement, and Jews were leaving Germany en masse to the United States, to Europe, to France, to Britain, to Palestine, everywhere. And probably because they controlled the USA banking system and probably other banking systems all over the world, we were all paying for this global control network, taking over the world, conquering the world. We were paying for it. And if you look up on, I said before, I made some notes here when I read this stuff. What about Palestine and all the Middle East countries since 9/11, just so they could have a greater Israel in the Yinon plan? All this stuff is verifiable. So I guess because we're going cattle, we really don't matter. We're not humans. These aristocrats are the humans. The rest of us are cattle. Even Benjamin Netanyahu said something really nasty in Fink's Bar. Go look it up. Benjamin Netanyahu, Fink's Bar. You'll see. Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, ex-prime minister, in a heated argument in his Congress, he said, "Don't worry about America. We control America." Of course they do. Now or never must all nations of the earth make a common cause against the monstrous claim that the slaughter and starvation and annihilation by a country that has reverted to barbarism of its own innocent and defenseless citizens without rhyme, reason, or excuse is an internal affair against which the rest of the world must stand idly by and not lift a hand in defense. And again, who put Hitler in power? And he tells us in this document that they did. There were a lot of common sense leaders in Germany. And they know who had betrayed Germany during World War I with the Balfour Agreement. But we're not supposed to talk about the truth. That'll get you in trouble. I have seen and talked with many of these terror-stricken refugees who have had the good fortune to escape over the border, though forced to leave their property behind them. And I want to say to you that nothing that has seeped through to you over the rigid censorship and the lying propaganda that are the work to conceal and misrepresent the situation of the Jews in Germany begins to tell a fraction of the frightful story of fiendish torture, cruelty, and persecution that are being inflicted day by day on these men, women, and children of the terrorists of worse than death in which they are living. Meanwhile, if you watch my video series 270, IBM and the Holocaust, the big corporations were using all these punch cards in computers and were tallying up every piece of property that these Jewish people who were leaving owned. It was all being computerized. So after the war, reparations were to be made. They were to extract all of that wealth from Germany. So he's not telling everything in this story here. When the tale is told, as it will be someday, if the impotent League of Nations, they call it impotent because they couldn't control it. So anything they can't control, like Venezuela, like Iran, etc., they have to demonize. Ever sufficiently awakens from its Rip Van Winkle slumbers, the League of Nations, to the realization of its power and duty to persecute an investigation into the facts, the world will confront a picture so fearful in its barbarous cruelty that the hell of war and the alleged Belgium atrocities will pale into insignificance as compared to this devilishly, deliberately, cold-blooded, planned, and already partially executed campaign for the extermination of a proud, gentle, loyal, law-abiding people, a people who love and have shed their blood for their fatherland, and to whom Germany owes a large part of its prosperity and its great scientists, its educators, its lawyers, its physicians, its poets, its musicians, its diplomats, its philosophers, who are the backbone of the past cultural life. So the Jews did everything for everybody in the world. And we are an ungrateful world, so he says here. But why dwell longer upon this revolting picture that ravages, rot, by these ingrates and beasts of prey, animated by the loathsome motives of race, hatred, bigotry, and envy. For the Jews are the aristocrats of the world. He says it, not me. Go look this speech up. From time immemorial, they have been persecuted and have seen their persecutors come and go. I'm not going to deny that. For 2,000 years, 3,000 years, the Jews have been homeless, taken into captivity. Apparently in Jeremiah, it was the Lord who called on King Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon to go down and destroy Jerusalem and the temple, because the Jews were sacrificing their sons and their daughters to the demon Moloch. That's in the Bible. God had them destroyed, and the first temple and the second temple. They don't mention that. They have alone survived, and so will history repeat itself. But that furnishes no reason why we should permit this reversion of a once great nation to the Dark Ages, or fail to rescue the 600,000 human souls, not 6 million, in his 1933 speech. 600,000 and 6 million is a big difference. From the tortures of hell, as we can with the aid of our Christian friends, if we have the will to act. Protest and pleas from all corners of the earth and from the leaders of all creeds have proven in vain, and the unavailing as it was the idealistic dream of our martyred president of making the world safe for democracy and of protecting minorities. Meanwhile, you like that when you watch a movie and they come in and say, meanwhile, over here. Anyways, meanwhile, while this guy is saying this in New York in 33, it said in this document 20 million, but on Rentz's website, rents.com, it says 100 million, and I've seen documents with 25 million, apparently admitted as correct in an Israeli newspaper. 60 million, 66 million. Christians were being slaughtered in the Russian territories between World War I and World War II by the Bolshevik Jewish people. He doesn't mention that here. I wonder why. What then are to be the lines of our defensive campaign against these atrocities, on which we are already actively embarked? Are we right in our plan? If so, what steps shall now be persecuted to attain success? Our campaign is twofold, defensive and constructive. On the defensive side will be an economic embargo against Germany, all German goods, shipping, and services. On the constructive side will be an appeal to the League of Nations to construe and to enforce the labor union provisions of the Versailles Treaty and the written promises made by Germany while the treaty was under negotiation, and to protect its minorities, which have been flagrantly violated by its disfranchisement and persecution of the German Jews. So I suspect when they put Hitler in power, and they had the IBM computerized data from World War I, and all the Jews were leaving in mass, and they had documented all their wealth on these computers, and maybe when Hitler took power, he stopped payment on those reparations, and apparently that brought out the vengeance upon the world Jewish people for not getting their wealth back. And they created the wars. They started the wars. They controlled the banking systems. It's okay for them to rob everything from us, but rob from them? Oh my. What boycott means? Well, things happen when big things happen. In June, YouTube canceled my Rick Miracle channel. This is September 2nd, and I'm trying to finish up some old videos because it disrupted my life. Anyways, I started this video back in June. I was going through my videos, sorting things out, trying to reorganize, and realized I hadn't finished this one. But if you're watching this, you're not going to notice anything but one clip to the next clip, other than I have a different shirt on, etc. So where I left off talking about Samuel Udemeyer's speech after he returned from Germany and calling for the utter destruction of Germany, reminds me of 9/11, calling for the utter destruction of Iraq and then Afghanistan and Syria and now Iran, and of course the huge wars in the 1800s with Russia and China calling for the destruction, and Central South Africa, the Boer Wars, the Boxer Wars. So these people who control our planet, the people mentioned in Samuel Udemeyer's speech here, have been circling around the world for the past 300 years, totally destroying whole nations and peoples. They recruited Japan to subdue China when it was revolting, and after they had accomplished that, they reneged on their commitment to pay Japan, so they used the exiled Chinese leader and brought him back and attacked Japan. And of course, with World War II, they nuked Japan. So these evil forces are busy. So let me just continue reading what boycott means. Right now, apparently, they're boycotting Venezuela, a country with more oil resources than any other nation in the world, gold and other mineral resources more than any other nation in the world. But the elite do not control it. So they're boycotting Venezuela, so the people are starving with all that wealth. Unbelievable. So Samuel Udemeyer's letter calling for the enforcement of the Versailles Treaties and the punishment on the Germans from World War I. And in between World War I and World War II, apparently preparations for World War II. And in the middle of that, they couldn't control the government, the legislation of the United States, the administration. So they brought about an intentional economic destruction, the Great Depression. I've been learning all this in these different books. So let me finish this. I only have a few minutes to get my 1-hour video done here. But it says here, as to the boycott, strange to say, a mere handful in number, but powerful in influence, of our thoughtless but doubtless well-intentioned Jews seem obsessed and frightened by the bare mention of the word boycott. This is between World War I and World War II. It signifies and conjures up to them images of force and illegality, such as have on occasions in the past characterized struggles between labor unions and their employers. As these timid souls are capitalist and employers, the word and all that it implies are hateful to their ears. So Samuel Udemeyer is bashing other Jews who are not willing to go along with the boycott of Germany. In point of fact, it signifies nothing of the kind. These gentlemen do not know what they are talking or thinking about. Instead of surrendering to their vague fears and half-baked ideas, our first duty is to educate them as to what is meant by a purely defensive economic boycott and what we are doing and proposing. So Germany was under attack economically 7 years before World War II. And it was the British financiers, the Illuminati Rothschilds, who financed the Hitler regime to help build up the power base and industrial base. Back to this letter here. Admittingly, the boycott is our only real effective weapon. Just like I said, they didn't control the American government between World War I and World War II during a certain period, 1929. So they withdrew the monies and the lending from the U.S. and caused a Great Depression and a huge amount of suffering here in America. And apparently there were depressions and financial destruction in many other countries all over the world. That's how powerful these people are. So he's talking about these Jews who won't go along. These gentlemen who are taking counsel of their groundless fears to the exclusion of their reason have done nothing and have no program except to attempt to arouse world opinion, which is and has been from the outset on our side. So he's saying this Jewish guy, Samuel Udemeyer, is saying the whole world is on their side, but I'm scratching my head saying, well, wait a minute. Weren't all the Jews exiled from Spain in the 1500s? And right after that in Britain and France and all of Eastern Europe, and they had Western Europe, and they had to flee towards Russia, Eastern Europe, stopped at the Russian border and wound up in Poland and Ukraine and Belarus and all those countries, causing a lot of disturbances there. So the Jews have been forced out of numerous countries for 2,000 years, and he's saying the world is on their side and they've done so much, had so many accomplishments. It is not necessary to belittle or underrate that accomplishment. If their aimless, fruitless endeavors in that direction may be so dignified in recognition of their good intentions, barren of results as they have been. It is sufficient that the efforts have proven unavailing and that the campaign of Streckenlight not only goes unabated in the face of a unanimous world opinion, but that it is increasingly in intensity, and that the masses of German people, misled by government propaganda and the suppression of free speech and of the press, are either voluntarily or thoroughly fear or through fear of punishment at the hands of their despotic rulers, supporting their government in this hellish campaign. Wow. So they're not censoring people today in 2019, are they? That was a rhetorical question. Of course they are. They canceled my channel. You can go on to many other YouTube channels, and a lot of them have been canceled. The censorship with the internet and shadow banning and so much more, it is just way up there right now. So when you read this guy's letter back then and you take a picture of today, and they're trying to get the American government to make it illegal to say bad things or boycott Israel, and of course all over Europe after World War II, in many of those countries it is illegal to say bad things about the Jews or the Zionists and all of this. You'll go to prison. All of your properties will be confiscated, your rights and everything else. So they want to create the same situation here in the USA. And even that recent gun shooting in Texas yesterday, this is September 2nd, and Donald Trump gets on TV saying, the safety of an American people comes first. And they will continue having these shootings and bombings and advertising it on TV until they pass legislation to disarm the USA people. Then they'll make it hate speech to talk about these peoples from the synagogue of Satan, the Illuminati, the Kabbalists, the banksters, the people who are bribing and controlling our leaders and control our country, the people who are installing 5G. Apparently, President Donald Trump is going to Poland to try to support getting the installation of 5G in that country. This is big. Anyways, let me just finish this video up. What then have these amiable gentlemen accomplished, and what do they hope or expect to accomplish in the way of stemming this conflagration of civilization by their feather-dusted methods? I love his speech method. You cannot put out a fire, and especially that kind of fire, by just looking on until the mad flames, fanned by the wind of hate, have destroyed anything. Fanned by the wind of hate. What are we proposing, and have already gone far towards doing, is to persecute, prosecute, a purely defensive economic boycott that will undermine the Hitler regime and bring the German people to their senses by destroying their export trade on which their very existence demands. So there it says here, this next sentence, force them to learn. So they're using these same tactics now. So these documents and these books I go over, please watch them and take notes. This is very important information, and it appears to be coming to a head here in 2019 September. Who knows what 2020 will bring? Look what has happened already since 2001. And look what's going on with all this computerized facial recognition, monitoring of everything that you do, that I do, credit cards, where we go, what we buy, everything is all being compiled into metadata. It reminds me of the preparations prior to World War II, when they were using the IBM computer machines and cards to catalog everything that was in Germany prior to the war. They knew the war was coming. They were planning for the war. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.